looking for other members. I see Tim. And Tim sees me.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, where we're at tonight. Well, I want to welcome everybody tonight to our December meeting, the Eldorado Hills APAC. The 2019 Chair, John Davey, and Tim White, Vice Chair, are here. We're missing a few of our officers tonight. We're going to call the meeting to order. Then the first thing we do is adoption of our meeting agenda. And so if there's no objections, no changes, very well. We'll move right along. Beginning of every meeting, we offer an opportunity for public comment for anything that is not on the agenda tonight. So we have a very limited agenda. So if there's anything residents want to speak to before we get started, we ask the audience members to come up to the microphone, give us your name so we know where you're from, and say what you need to say. Okay. And we've been doing it for months and months. We do record all our meetings on video now, and we share those as part of our meeting minutes. So if you're camera shy, just don't look. If anybody wants to have a public comment, could you do it right here so we can hear on the...
I can. And the last thing in the world I want to do is make a public comment, but I really do feel compelled to say something about the proposed Central Eldorado Hills specific plan. Now, I'm part of a group, just some neighbors that get together, and they asked me to evaluate the draft fiscal impact analysis. Okay. So I have some tables that I'm going to leave with you, and they're going to leave at the planning. I know you don't have enough paper. Yeah, and I'm going to leave with the planning commission tomorrow. A little flyer of the key bullets that I'm addressing will be available. I didn't want to leave any handouts around, but if anybody wants it, please see me. If anybody wants the addresses of the planning commissioners and the board of supervisors, they're all on one blank letter, so you can fill in whatever you want. I have that. And we also have a sign-up sheet for any concerned citizens who would like to join our information sharing. All right, so with that having been said, my key bullet points are based on, they're straight out of the draft fiscal impact analysis. And it shows the net annual deficit of $438,000 per year for the county's general fund at build-out. Now this isn't hidden, it's no surprise, all right? Most of the impact analysis is about how these negative impacts are going to be mitigated with special taxes that are going to be worked out as part of the development agreement.
Taxes and fees.
Taxes and fees. Now, the only thing that I felt should really be clarified is in the tables, in this analysis, it shows 5-year periods in the columns. Phase 1 for building out this proposed plan, phase 2, and then build out. And it's called the cumulative fiscal analysis. But they never add anything up. And what they have under the 5-year periods are only the annual losses. So the real loss under each of those columns, like phase 1, is 5 times what they show. So if you just use their own numbers, there is the cumulative combined deficit for the county's general and road funds, which was the primary objective, was to show the impact of this plan, is a negative $4,885,000. And that's in 2015 dollars, with no adjustments for increased service costs or inflations, as things progress. So frankly, when I looked at that, I kept thinking I must have missed something, because how could it be this bad and have gotten this far in the planning process? We've had 3 of us review it. It is this bad.
When we get to the project tonight, I'm going to ask you to give us those numbers again that you guys are looking at and where your concerns are. Because I want to touch on it because I have a question about it too.
Okay.
So did you say your name on the microphone so we know who you are?
Well, I'm not sure if I did or not, but my name is Brianna Finley-Link. I'm a resident of Ridgeview. I consider this project, certainly the fiscal impact, but the whole impact is county-wide.
Yes.
So that's why that's in the sign-up sheet. I'm hoping people are going to contact all of the supervisors so that we can share ideas on it.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is anybody else that would like to jump on the...
you want me to leave this here or?
You want, okay, okay, go.
Yeah, all right.
Just two copies.
Right in that, there we go.
Shuffled around.
So I don't know if this is the right venue, but I'm Ed Dell, Riverview resident.
Thank you.
With what's happened in the past,
Oh, yeah.
what's happened in the past couple of years, with the opening up of the roads going down into Folsom, the back way, the traffic coming down Wilson and then across on Montridge has exponentially grown. Conversely, the Folsom put in about a dozen stop signs in the lower community there because they were freaking out that the people were driving down at incredible speed through the communities. But nobody's done anything on Montridge. And there's one turn as you're coming, when you're top of the hill going all the way down, there's no stop signs all the way until you're in Folsom. And so people are coming down like a racetrack. So we need to put a stop sign on Montridge at the corner of Montridge and Montridge Court, Montridge Circle, to be able to stop that flow right in the middle of that racetrack. Because even a kid today almost got killed on that, car went sideways in the rain, just because it's a blind turn. So, I just figured I'd take this and what we gotta do, we gotta get a stop sign in it. And I put an X in the one spot where the stop sign is just right on that racetrack.
Good information.
And so, what's gonna happen is with all these communities, I don't know if everybody's seeing the same traffic I'm seeing coming down Wilson and Montridge. They're not even stopping at that corner of Wilson to Montridge, and I've seen cars go sideways in that turn.
Yeah, and I would, and since you're here tonight, my suggestion for you is, Supervisor Heidel's here tonight, and that contact his office. There's a lot of resources there for the community council where they direct those concerns to the appropriate agencies and the appropriate parties to respond. DOT may need to come out and take a look, but as volunteers here, we don't, we'll provide input when it's a project or if the community's talking about it, but I would encourage you to definitely don't just stop here, but make sure you make this
Did you go to who?
to Supervisor Heidel's office. So, and we'll tell you.
Talk to my assistant Cindy here.
There she is.
Okay.
There she is. I got lights in my eyes. But no, because that will get you to the people who know what's going on, would maybe heard more about it, and they want to hear your information. And then, maybe they'll be able to tell you, hey, they're working on something, or no, we're not working on it yet, but maybe we need to take a study, maybe we need to look.
And then one other thing of interest is, I know that El Dorado Hills is sanctioning a disc golf course in the Bass Lake area. That's apparently on the plan to go, but if everybody wants to keep there's a big push to keep that old golf course natural looking, to put baskets and tee pads like they've done in Placerville, Cameron Park, virtually every city around us, Auburn, Rockland, Orangevale, everybody's got them, we don't have them,
That's fair. Well, they got to own it first, but yeah, I know that's the plan at Bass Lake, but it can be more than one.
But down here, it'd be a great one to keep
Yes, it
it
would.
natural.
Thank
Also,
you.
go to the CHP because
Thank you.
they do traffic enforcement. Call them, let them know your concerns. They might, at some point in time, they might throw out a car there. If you tell them the time that the most egregious violations occur, they might put someone there and they'll capture them for a day or two.
Yeah, I forgot. The other one you can call is the Sheriff's Department, the retirees. They pull a trailer out and leave it out. They leave it out for part of the day, but it's a radar trailer and it shows you the speeds that you're going by. It might help a little bit. Nothing's going to stop it until you said like something's corrected.
There's one been on that lower road in Folsom, right down there. It's been there for the last 6 months. It's still there. Right now with the radar sign of how fast you're going.
Yeah. Those are the resources that, like I said, like Tim was suggesting, it might help a little bit until something more substantial is in place.
Definitely.
Are there any other public comments tonight? That was pretty good. All right. Well, with that, we're going to move forward. Supervisor Tidal is here tonight, and he's going to share some information with us about what's going on in the county. And I think it's blinding you guys.
Is it blinding?
Yes. Well, it is.
Oh, wow, it is. Well, good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight. I know it's a rainy night. It's hard to get people interested in coming to meetings, but the good news about APAC and our community council meetings is they are videotaped. So they're put out on a YouTube version on the websites and stuff. So if you do want to, if you're unable to make a meeting and want to get caught up on something with an agenda, I would encourage you to go watch those videotapes because it's a way to keep current with what's going on. And there's a lot of things changing. So the thing I wanted to make sure people were aware of is yesterday the Board of Supervisors had a hearing to listen to an appeal that was submitted to the Board of Supervisors by Joe Harn. And Joe Harn submitted it as a resident, but he is our auditor controller. So the county auditor controller submitted an appeal as a resident, which he has the right to do, basically asking for reconsideration of the Planning Commission's, I think it was a 4-0 vote to approve the J7 proposal. J7 is a project that's right off of Bass Lake Road that is part of the Serrano subdivision. And there were several considerations that were raised up in that appeal. The number one condition was the need for the 12.5-acre park that's been being designed and discussed and stuff at the intersection basically of Serrano Parkway and Bass Lake Road. Park and Development Company has the responsibility for an outdated development agreement, to provide and basically make all the improvements to have a turnkey 12.5-acre park there, consistent with the funds that have been collected over many years as part of the Belarus payments that the Serrano Homeowners Association members, Serrano residents, have paid into this. So the estimate is that's probably in the neighborhood somewhere between $2.5 maybe $3.5 million. So I'm not sure what but the appeal was all about until we get that park committed and we know it's going to be built, do not approve J7, which is not adjacent to the park, it's nearby, because this allows the developer to go on and not deliver the project. That was the appeal note. There were two other things that were in there. There was a note that they wanted to have, Joe submitted and wanted to have left turn lanes going into Bridlewood. So left turn lane out, left turn lane in, which means you have to create what's called a refuge lane in the middle divide there so that people can get out of the flow of traffic, make a left turn in. And you're talking about a gated community, so you have stack up distances sometimes. It's not easy to cross in between traffic. So those are the things that was proposed. The third thing was a sidewalk. The sidewalk needs to be installed somewhere to get people from the adjacent properties down to the new Safeway that's going on Bass Lake. The J7 project itself has a trail internal to the project, gated community that will lead to Safeway. So whoever buys a house in J7 is not going to have the problem of having their child walk to Safeway to get bread or milk or whatever. But the adjacent properties that want to get down to Safeway don't have a Safeway. There we go. That was used in the discussion yesterday too. They don't have a Safeway to get to Safeway, right? So that was the three major bones of contention. There's a lot of discussion on it. If you're interested in understanding the details, I would encourage you again to go to the county website and listen to that segment of our video, because there was a lot of exchange back and forth by various people. I thought it was productive. I ended up making the motion to continue it, to allow staff to get together and to try to come up with some kind of agreement that provides assurance that that park is going to get built, and it will be built in the shortest period of time, consistent with the amount of money that's available in the CFD fund. So it's now up to staff, and the CSD has committed their staff and their, I guess, their legal counsel to support those discussions. The county's made the commitment for that, and Parker's made the commitment for that. So hopefully, through those discussions, we'll get to the point where we can make a decision that really works for the community and addresses all those issues. So it was somewhat of a negotiation in real time that happened yesterday. Part of that motion was to bring back that information from staff to the Board of Supervisors in a time-specific format for our board meeting on February 4th. So we're not just kicking the can down the road, we're saying you got a limited amount of time, get your heads together, come up with something that works, and let's see if we can move forward with a better beneficial project associated with this, that the community can see the net improvements that were made over what was originally proposed. And I hate to say it, but that's the game that has to be played these days. Original proposals are generally not what the community wants. Because the efforts of APAC to start that discussion about what if you could do this or do that, how it would help the community. All of those discussions tend to lead to a much better project when a vote is taken. And so that's what this is all about. So that's the first thing I'd encourage people to look at. The second thing, I want to give everybody an update on Costco. Costco, as most of you know, had indicated a strong interest in having one of their warehouses built on Silver Valley Parkway at the Highway 50 interchange. And they moved the original site that they want to use, which is close to Oak Meadow School, to the other side of the roadway that's right backed up against the freeway, backed up against Highway 50. So it's more compatible with the adjacent neighborhoods, it's more compatible with the school that's there, it's the least impact you could make for those particular provisions by putting it at that site. They were waiting to submit an application to the county and move forward because of the other partner in that whole project, which is referred to as EDH 52, and they have entitlements to build a big box store, hotel, gas stations, other things. So the original plan was they wanted to submit all of their environmental documents at the same time, proceed down the same path, and get the same, hopefully, set of approvals from their perspective to move forward with the project. That has now changed evidently. Costco has talked about buying the property, moving out on their own, submitting an application, which will get their part of the project moving with the EDH 52 to be a follower sometime later with once they get, I guess, their anchor tenants and those kinds of things. So I look at that as a favorable condition because I think it has the potential to happen quicker, to get into the full EIR they have to do, because Costco is committed to do a full EIR. So we will know what the environmental impacts are. We'll be able to look at it. We already know that there's going to be some road circulation issues there. We have our DOT starting to look at some of those conditions and hypothesize what needs to be done. But until there's an application filed, our DOT, Department of Transportation, cannot start working with the Costco traffic engineers to review plans and work out something that's going to be acceptable from the standpoint of flow and continuity and all those things. So that's to come, but there is encouragement there for those of you who think the Costco should happen, that may be moving forward now when the past has kind of been on hold. So no timelines or anything. I will not know more than that until they actually file an application with the county. Then they start tracking things. So that's the bottom line with that one, but they have made several inquiries, various county departments asking what are the fees associated with this kind of a project? How long will it take us to process this stuff? That's what gives me an indication that they are interested. The other thing is, this is a unique site in the United States. The way they're proposing, they'll have underground parking. About a third of the parking will be underground. It's never been done before in the United States. They have a model that I guess it's in Asia and in Europe, several places. First time in the United States. That's a lot more costly construction. That tells me they really want that site. Otherwise, they'd find another piece. So we'll see how it goes. No guarantees. But we could be getting an application within the next, I'll say, 3 months. Who knows? Last thing I wanted to talk to was that there's a Health and Human Services Agency senior survey that's been being distributed through the community. We've put it out on my Nextdoor account along with some other information. So if you know of a senior, and this is typically 50 and above, the way they rate seniors, so you don't have to be 65 or anything else, but if you have interest in identifying what services are available for that group of people, this survey helps them determine what services you may have direct applicability to. For instance, it's got how much annual income do you make, and they're associated with the housing costs. So whether you're very low housing, those kinds of things, so that they can determine for a given group of people, how many of the programs that Health and Human Services administered are people really eligible for. And then they can start reaching out and say, do you realize you could apply for this and you're very likely to get this particular money, et cetera, to help our seniors, particularly those on fixed income that are having struggles with that part of it. So that's the stuff on Nextdoor. And those are really the three things I wanted to talk about because you're going to cover Central Alderley Hills. And I do want to mention that John Vania, our District 1 Planning Commissioner, is here tonight. So he can maybe give us some information again that relative to the timing, because their meeting starts at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow in Placerville. But they basically have a consent calendar and they have one other item before they get to Central Alderley Hills. So my guess is it might be 45 minutes into it before they get there. So you might want to plan on being there about 9:15, but that may be too late. Maybe John's got a better idea of how long it's going to take. I wouldn't encourage you to go first thing and sit there for probably at least 45 minutes. But so timing is critical if you don't have enough time just to spend all day. And with that, I'll just open up for any questions or anything that I can answer related to APAC type items, because I answered the other questions at the community council. All right, seeing that. Thank you, John. All right.
Well, tonight we do have a guest speaker, and I see him getting him. Kevin Lowe, General Manager for the Dorado Hills Community Services District. He's going to talk about some of the district's efforts in exploring some alternative power suppliers or providers, utilities throughout Dorado Hills. This is all yours. Thanks. It literally is all yours.
In my own house here. All right, thank you. Okay, so the CSD and the Alternative Energy Initiative that we have is ongoing at this time. So it is something that we're actively pursuing, and I'll be able to give you some updates tonight. May not be anything so earth-shattering that's going to make you sing and dance or skip around very happy, but we're at least giving you an update on what we've been doing. With it, there really is much to investigate as it relates to energy provision alternatives, including CCA and SMUD annexation. The CSD has been endeavoring on this initiative in pursuit of reliable energy from a responsible provider, as we have all experienced the shortcomings of our current provider in this area. We've all felt that effect of those PSPSs. Not to say that it may not have been warranted for saving life or property, but we definitely experienced those impacts. So this is another example of how the CSD is listening to the desires of the community and channeling that voice. But I don't want to say that it all rests on the CSD. This happens because of organizations like APAC, community council, residents like yourself who have great ideas and vision and come forward to an organization like the CSD, but not just the CSD, and talk to us with those ideas and vision with a thoughtful plan. In this case, we've had some community groups. I see one of the gentlemen in the back there, Mr. Jeff Smith, being an integral kind of catalyst for this, as well as previous General Manager Wayne Lowry, and others, many others, had meetings with Mr. Heidel, Kevin Kiley, and just trying to find out, is this the right thing to pursue? And at a point not too long ago, CSD established an ad hoc of the board and assigned me several tasks to investigate on this, to really look into this matter more, to see if it's a viable solution, knowing that I think everybody kind of wants it. So here we go with a little bit of that. For SMUD annexation, I just come out the gate with it. That would be a multi-year project. It's not something that's going to happen overnight or next year. It would require an extensive analysis of the current infrastructure, a financial feasibility analysis, rate structuring analyses, rate structuring plan, negotiating with PG&E to acquire their facilities. They don't have to just give up those facilities, and they own it. So to acquire their lines and etc. Considerations for PG&E employees that probably live here in our community, maybe our neighbors now. You know, we're not trying to put people out of jobs, but looking at the greater good of the overall change if that were to happen. Considerations for additional businesses and jobs that may benefit from this, if this is going to be better rate structuring or not. It may or may not be. That's not the main focus at this time for the CSD, because if you're going to acquire a bunch of facilities, infrastructure, like the PG&E lines that are out there, we're talking about buying something, so that has to be purchased. There's financing going behind that. So that's something that typically gets built into a new rate structure. So out the gate, there may be no savings on it, but it may be a longer term fix for reliable energy from a responsible provider. There's also various votes that would have to take place. There are particulars that surround the LAFCO process and district boundaries and service changes. So you're currently in the El Dorado Hills CSD. Community Service District law does permit many, over 30 different powers. CSD does parks and recreation, waste hauling, some aspects of telecommunications, CC&Rs. There's also the element of energy provision in Community Service District law. However, we don't really have staff that know a whole lot about providing energy at this time. That's why we're exploring the matter now. We do those other things well. I think that's why we've all looked to our neighbor, SMUD. They've got a pretty good operation going on. People seem to like their rate structuring. I'm not an expert on all the details of their rate structuring. And they're right here, next to us in Folsom. So you're looking over the fence saying the grass is greener over there. So it seems like a natural we reach out to them. They're a utility district. They have authority to provide, procure and provide energy. So we would look to them to possibly annex, but that's not the only thing that we've been looking into. We're really just putting the pieces together as to what steps would need to be taken and what those costs for consultants and staff time would be right now. That's the point we're at right now today. So another angle that we've been looking into is the legislative route. There could be opportunities to work with legislators to make any of a number of the processes that we mentioned, those analyses, annexation, de-annexation if that's needed, the votes that go into that. Maybe there's a legislative fix there. I think there are several, if not many, legislators out there that I think could be compelled or just outright interested to get involved in that kind of legislative fix, hopefully this next session, given current status of the PSPS events and everything else that's going on with our current energy provider. So this route, the legislative one, may be one that bears the best fruit for us in the most immediate term, because as you heard me talk about in the beginning, a multi-year project that could be 3 to 5 years when I say multi-year, I don't mean just 2. Maybe we can trim that up with a legislative fix, make this annexation process something more streamlined. So we're hopeful that that could be something very meaningful, and we do have some legislators and our advocacy groups on our list to be reaching out to over the next couple of weeks to see, is this something you can get behind, and is this something that we can help out with? So CSDA is kind of a parent organization for special districts, and California Special District Association. They have a legislative advocacy team that's pretty darn good, and we work with them. I work with them often. So we're going to be reaching out to them as well to see if we can flex that muscle or help us flex that muscle to get something done on the legislative realm. Some of the challenges in front of us right now. SMUD agency. It has to be receptive to any sort of annexation. So they have a board. They have 7 board members now. Put yourself in their shoes for just a moment. It has to be scary for them to want to go after any other annexation. If you know some of their history, which, as I mentioned, Mr. Jeff Smith's a great historian on this. Back in, 2006?
Right.
The YOLO annexation didn't go over so well. It was fought by PG&E, and SMUD being a public entity, when they have to go to their members, their ratepayers, or constituents for a vote, it's not, once you initiate that vote proceeding, the agency can't go out and campaign for a yes or a no. It's left into your hands. They can do education, but it's an odd dance. It's not a good looking dance. So in that case, they lost probably a ton of money during that, and I'm sure it's scary for them to go out for any annexation. And then put yourself in their shoes another time. Why should they and why would they want to annex El Dorado Hills? What did they gain? What did they lose? So that's been one part of our conversations with them. Not to get excited over having a conversation with SMUD, but a 2x2. 2x2 is 2 board members and 2 of their board members. So 2 of the CSD board members and myself, 2 of their board members and legal counsel met just this week to discuss this matter. Some of those particulars, won't dive into all the details of it, but I'm talking about some of those challenges right now that were presented to us during that meeting. So that receptiveness of the agency, of the board itself. Not just the board, we have a whole staff team, a big staff in SMUD that experienced that back in 06, and I'm sure they haven't forgotten it. So SMUD ratepayers, they have to agree to an annexation. You're talking about a mega vote. I'm not sure how many people are ratepayers that vote in SMUD, in meeting with their board directors this week. I think they each said that they have several 100,000 residents they serve. That may not be the units or the hookups. That may just be total count of population they serve. So when I multiply that by 7, I'm saying, well, you have, gosh, 1 million people you're serving in Smut. I don't know the exact number myself, but why in the world would they want and desire to annex El Dorado Hills? So those are some big challenges, and to go out to a vote is costly. But if something does change, maybe those ratepayers in that SMUD district realize that we are part of and connected to that greater community. I mean, we're right on the fringe here, Folsom, where SMUD stops. Yeah, if you know people out there that can help in leveraging the hearts and minds of them, great. That would be fantastic. But we see that as a Herculean challenge. That's where we start to go back to that legislative fix, possibly. Maybe there's something there that can help us out. So the costs, that's a challenge too. The cost for a full feasibility and financial analysis, looking at that infrastructure, costing everything out, just that right there, we don't know exactly what that cost is. We're going to find out what those costs are for that analysis, those analyses. And then PG&E opposition. I'd like to say that maybe they're at a state right now where they can't flex that muscle as hard as they did back in 06. I think it maybe not look so great for them. However, losing in a surface area is losing part of their business. I mean, who wouldn't fight to keep their own business? I don't know. I can't speak for them, but we see that as a clear and present challenge for this endeavor. So some of our big takeaways at this time, and again, this is just an update. We are still endeavoring upon this to find out if there is a good fix for El Dorado Hills. Some of the takeaways we do need to explore more so that we can put together a real course of action here. Do we keep moving on in that area pursuing SMUD? Or, as I didn't really talk about today, do we look at a CCA fix, a community choice aggregation fix? Now, as I understand it, and this may not be 100% accurate, if we did a CCA and we're just basically renting power and the lines from PG&E, they would still be turning power off and on. It's on their line. So unless there's some way around that. Now, we're going to explore that there, but that's our understanding right now. And if we're trying to work on reliable energy, responsible provider, that's first and second foremost. I'm not sure that the CCA is the right fix for us. And if the CSD is going to activate that aspect of its provision of services, you're talking about bringing on an expertise and workforce that we currently don't have right now. So, again, that's another challenge. We do need to engage those interested legislators and interested communities around us. We've been hearing that there's a number of communities out there in California and otherwise that would like to make changes such as this. So sometimes pulling together makes sense. Sometimes pulling together can make it a little more chaotic. So we want to be deliberate in those steps if we're going to go down that route. Let's see here. And again, just back on the formal analysis cost, that's kind of a big one for us. We're anticipating that could be easily north of 100,000 just for an analysis. And we'll find out if we're going to do that in time. It's going to take us a little more time to dive into this. We really appreciate the community working group, Jeff, Wayne, and I know they've done a huge lift in getting out to the community and updating us with folks like in the business community and otherwise. I don't know that I'll have a ton of answers for you here today. This was meant to be an update, but I can try to field anything that you might have. Or if you have comments on it.
Suggestions.
Yeah, suggestions. We're open on this. We're here and you're here.
Well, are there any questions about it?
All right.
Wait, I see some hands up there.
Have you spoken to the city of Roseville about electricity?
Spoken to them about their energy provision.
They have their own city electric company.
We've not spoken with them directly about their own energy provision as a city, no. They're on our list as well as reviewing what Placer is doing.
Yeah.
If there's something to do, and again, we represent El Dorado Hills community service district, but we don't want to forget about our neighboring communities where it might make sense beyond our boundaries too. So when it gets to the point, if it gets to the point that the county or someone else needs to be involved or take the lead role, we'll know our place on that too.
Yeah, is it Rockland that's also exploring this?
I think there's
City of Rockland.
yeah, there's probably a number. I mean, there's a ton.
Special district. Putting together a special district.
To do energy provision. Yeah, there you can do that. It can be done. Now for here, I mean, maybe there is another, special district can be formed. A utility district could be formed here as well too, separate than any of the districts you have now. That's a possibility, but that's not something that we're exploring right now. Not that piece. It's just, propping up a new and different special district. Anyhow, any other?
Yeah, I would say that when SMUD was formed, they started the process in Sacramento. I want to say it was 1923. And it wasn't until after World War II, 46, that SMUD actually was officially a utility district. Now, the war got in the way, there was a little thing called the Depression. But at the same time, PG&E fought that as well back then. And it was contentious, and I know in Yellow it was contentious that PG&E was able to go out and campaign and, persuade. But as Kevin said, once you have it before the voters as an agency, you can't campaign or politic.
And it's not a new topic. I have some files in my office. We've done an archival search here with the CSD because at different times CSD has been involved in several initiatives. Now I have some files from 83 and 86 when they were pursuing something with SMUD back then, and looking into generating its own energy with wind turbines in the Altamont Pass. So different times. So we're doing a lot of research and we're trying to get out there and put it all together.
And I don't want to monopolize it. The question I'd say, I know that CDAC is talking about a CCA, Community Choice Aggregator, and the benefit there is primarily cost to ratepayers. And it is still over PG&E's equipment and their transmission networks. So, but in terms of, we look at planning, in terms of a lower cost or a lower rate, that's advantageous for the business part, because right now there is advantage. Whereas, the power costs here are significantly higher, and a mile down the road, they are not. And so, now this is all R&D right now, but I'm sure the city of Folsom is rather flexible when they want something, so they can accommodate and they have a lower cost power.
So I mentioned, I guess I was dancing around it, being a little vague, and I was talking about our neighboring communities.
Yeah.
I was speaking about the business park because it's actually an island of the CSD.
It's unique to itself.
But you can't not think of that.
Yes.
And there's another initiative going on, or at least an exploration, the CSD. There's an ad hoc to explore the cityhood topic, because again, as community and resident groups come to us with reasonable requests, the board, staff, take the time to research that. So if there was an actuality of the cityhood that comes forward, the business park may be a part of that.
Yeah. And there's some issues with the fire district boundaries, because when they were created, they couldn't have similar boundaries. They had to be different enough to not be essentially the same boundaries in the same agency. So, but yeah, the cityhood thing with another thing that would take a day or two.
Maybe in another month we'll have some updates on what we're doing there.
So if there aren't any other questions, thank you for being here tonight and providing that information. I know that a lot of people have been asking me, what do you know about that? I know when I read the paper, so.
That's the latest and greatest.
So.
I have a question.
Oh, there's one more question.
Well, not really a question. I just wanted to mention that the Folsom annexation, I think, was a success, less than a year. And we have a gentleman who was on that campaign in Folsom, and he's part of our resident group right now. So hopefully, like someone said from Blue Shield, we can focus on that success of that and see what they did to get that through.
Right, and hopefully it didn't come off as too skeptical or pessimistic. If we can, and maybe there was a more willing SMUD as an agency back then, and if we can get that to happen, maybe get them interested in this area, I think that's going to change the tides tremendously. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Kevin. Moving along. So here we go. So before we start this conversation tonight, the intent of having this on here, last month we had Strong Associates came and made a presentation. There was a lot of questions, a lot of public comments. And tonight, we're looking at where the project is right now. We'll talk about the Planning Commission schedule, what's been updated a little bit, the last Planning Commission meeting, some of maybe the very basic things that we've been looking at. These are a lot of documents, and it's confusing, it's a lot of work. And we're still reaching out for community assistance. If people are interested in being involved, I'll have an item at the end of our discussion where we talk about how you can contact with us, and maybe we can get that moving a little better. But for the purpose of tonight's conversation, Supervisor Howell's here, Commissioner Vignes here. They cannot, they should not take a public opinion, a position on this when it's something item before them. It should be something that works through a process. And that process is ongoing right now. They very well have opinions, they may very well have ideas, but right now they're evaluating what's in front of them. So that's what we're doing. Our intent here at APAC, and I think I've said it before, I didn't do this so that I can reject projects, approve projects. The idea here is that we look at proposed projects and we ask, does it make sense? Is it compatible? Is there a benefit? Can it be made better to benefit the community? A project like this, which has been ongoing since I want to say 2012, has a head of steam. It is a locomotive. If somebody's goal is to stop it, that's fine, that's your goal. But as a group of volunteers, we're looking at it as what are the merits, what are the negatives, can it be made better, can it not be made better? And then we'll offer our support, our conditional support, or no support at the end of our process. And again, we're an advisory group providing information, resident information and feedback. So if you want to participate, we would encourage you to do so. I guess we'll roll this out now. But do you want to jump in for a second? Okay, I want to jump in. Commissioner Vignes here right now. You want to come up here? You want up there?
I'll come up here.
Lights in your eyes right there.
Yeah, just real quick, the meeting is tomorrow, starting at 8:30. We do have an item first, and Supervisor Heidel said, I think it'll be about 45 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes. So if you showed up a little bit after 9, I think you'll be fine. And it should be carrying on a good part of the day, unfortunately. But hey, we'll be there as long as it takes. Also wanted to announce you may, I don't know if you were going to mention about the special meeting in January.
I have already. It's on the.
Okay.
Right here.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
But go ahead and talk about it, please.
Yeah. So we, the board had asked us to have a special meeting in January, and so it's going to be at the district church, January 13th from 6 to 10. And I'm trying to encourage staff and the commissioners to deal with as many issues as we can up to that meeting, so we can garner as much public support. We'd like to, and it's going to be in the evening for most folks who can't necessarily make it during the daytime. So we're trying to deal as much issues as we can up to that meeting, so we can garner as much public support. We don't want to take up a lot of time, dealing with issues, but if we have to, we'll do some of that. But I'm trying to get a majority of that time for public input, and that's what the point is for that. So I don't know if there was any questions about the process and so forth. We're dealing with a lot of issues. I hear we got some more information coming, probably going to be on our desk tomorrow morning, which I haven't seen yet. So we'll just kind of roll with it as best we can. And we're tentatively going to have a fourth meeting after this, and maybe even an additional one, depending on if we need some more time to get through the issues and so forth. So if there's any questions or anything, I just wanted to just briefly outline that.
John, I know that I believe the commission requested more traffic information be presented at the beginning of the meeting tomorrow. What time do you expect public comment to be open? But by the time the staff presents the traffic, the 200 more pages that were just posted yesterday, by the time you commissioners have questions and stuff like that, realistically, when do you expect public comment?
I would say it's going to take at least an hour and a half to 2 hours to get through our issues before public comments. So I would say late morning, and it may even happen after lunch. But I hear that the applicant and staff is going to be addressing the traffic issues, but I have not seen anything yet, so we'll be dealing with it real time with you folks. So that's another topic I don't care to get into at this point. But, so that's what I hear in the latest memo that I got from planning, is that they're going to be doing a presentation. And I've got a variety of issues that I have questions for. We had a traffic engineer just submitted comments today who submitted a pretty extensive analysis in the draft EIR, if you read that. So I'm fortunate that he's chimed back in based on the final updated traffic stuff that's been provided. So look forward to talking about that as well. So, anything else? Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. And I'll also chime in. That hearing that was on November 14th. It was the day after our meeting here, and Richard was there. I heard him on the audio. It was a long meeting. So pack a lunch, and maybe get your beauty sleep after this tonight if you're showing up tomorrow. So as John said, the original intent was to schedule 4 planning commission hearings and to try and get one here in El Dorado Hills so that the residents who aren't able to make it to Glassville on a work day could contribute and offer public comment, or at least here. And John was saying that that public comment section will be later in the meeting or the hearing. There's some advantages to being there for the full thing and hearing what is said, and maybe some questions to be answered, or maybe it'll spark additional questions, or spark a comment from you to provide the planning commission for their consideration. So as we're looking at it, the first hearing was November 14th in Placerville. The second one will be tomorrow in Placerville as well. The next one was announced for January 13th, 2020, which is an odd thing to say, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. So that one you might want to bring a dinner. It's going to be a long night. It is at District Church in El Dorado Hills, which is right up off of Rossmore, behind the movie theater. And then a fourth hearing is to be determined if it's necessary. They anticipate that they're going to do it, with scheduling out either late January or February. And then the Board of Supervisors have suggested there'll be 2 hearings, and I believe they talked about having 1 hearing in El Dorado Hills as well. So, the one thing that we can say about the project is that we will talk about it. There will be a lot of opportunity. So as we're going through here. So we brought some slides from Serrano Associates' presentation last month, just to refresh everybody if anybody wasn't here. Central El Dorado Hills Pacific Land Project. It's comprised of 2 planning areas. One is primarily the old golf course, executive course, with additional properties that they're going to move out of the El Dorado Hills Pacific Plan into this new specific plan. That's what they're proposing. So Pedregal is on the west side of El Dorado Hills Boulevard, 102 acres. There's existing single-family and multifamily. There's some apartment complex right up there on the boulevard. The general plan use right now is high-density residential and multifamily. So it's zoned for some significant housing units. The Serrano west side is on the east side of El Dorado Hills Boulevard. 234 acres. Well, they say surrounded by existing retail and single-family. There is existing retail and single-family. And then the general plan use right now is open space. The adopted plan is the El Dorado Hills Pacific Plan, which is the build-out we're seeing right now, and then the commercial, which is the Rayleigh Shopping Center, La Brigada. But I would say that I would qualify the open space down here that is actually zoned recreational open space. So it's a minor distinction, but it is a distinction. So the land uses that they talked about when they presented the project last month, they have, for the Petrichor side, they have a lot of projects come with density labels that the applicant is sort of applying for, in their internal planning, how they discuss it. So they refer to 2 densities in the technical side, the village residential low, which is 37 units total on 45 acres. So these will be some pretty big lots. One dwelling unit per acre. And the lot sizes will be a little bit larger than the Ridgeview lots, is what they're saying for these residential low, the items in yellow. And this is Wilson's right here. Fire Station 85 is across the road. And then their residential high, 10 acres of total land in that project, that fine area. 100 units of market rate, 10 units per acre, or 205 if they offer an age-restricted product. That would be 20, so it's a higher density. But again, the apartments are right here, Sterling Ranch, Cooper Hills, Dorado Village, and then in between, that's where they're envisioning, I'm imagining it's multifamily at that density. Whether it's attached single-family homes or apartments, condos, townhomes. But that's what's that. Then the other side is on the west side, and it is comprised of the old golf course, and then this Village D1, lot C and D along the ridge here, up behind the fire station, Yardshire Range. Toronto Parkway surrounded from the back in this area, and then the bottom of the golf course down here. So they're talking about 68 acres of residential, 133 acres of open space, 15 acres for a community park, which they originally called the Village Park down here at the bottom along the freeway. Civic limited commercial, which is a unique provision of this plan where they want to dedicate that land. They want to offer it to CSD, to another agency, maybe the county, but it could be commercial, it could be management offices for an agency. But it's 11 acres and it's across, Wilson comes across here, it's right across Wilson. There's some challenges on that piece of land because it's on a hillside. So the usage is, some people figure out what to do with it, I guess is what the thinking is. Again, they have their own designations for densities. The residential medium low is in the yellow. That's primarily 5 dwelling units per acre, which would be the biggest ones on the biggest lot sizes on this side of the project. 22 acres for medium high, which is in the sort of orange area right here. Okay, I might do it. And then the darker orange, I messed up. Darker orange is their high density, which is 14 dwelling units per acre, or 24 dwelling units per acre if it is an age-restricted product or community that they're building out. So most of that is intended to be close to the shopping areas right here. Jumping through it, there's the Civic Limited Commercial that we talked about up here, and then the Village Park is the dark green at the bottom, where a new road will be going through to connect the Country Club is the proposal. And they put a picture of Humphrey parking there. So the Civic, it's 11 acres, parks or recreation. It could be a senior center. I know that maybe January we've been talking about a project there, Center for the Ages. A municipal or administrative office like the CSD, the county, perhaps the fire department, which is right across Wilson from it. And then the Village Park, 15 acres, lighted sport fields, with various amenities that you would see at a larger park. So, this is the combined land use summary. 123 total acres for residential. Open space in park is 190. Where's my notes? So I'm trying to remember it. Try to break that up. The actual park space is 11 acres. Out of that 190, the rest is the open space, which is comprised of lots C and D, or Village D1 on the ridge, and the effort there is to preserve the ridge line and the oak trees, the dense oak canopy and everything there. So then, we've seen the map. We'll jump through it real quick. So when they talk about the general plan consistency, when they offer this project, they talk about that it had 121 general plan policies, goals, and issues that are in the general plan. And so as I've been going through it, and as individuals, we've been talking back and forth with some members of the community, a lot of people are wondering, well, they say it's consistent, but is it consistent? A lot of these things seem rather subjective. So we'll maybe touch on a few of them and get through it. So I just pulled a couple of them here. The transportation policy TC4I is non-motorized transportation. Promote walkability by adding new trails to existing trails and trails and pedestrian paths to retail services, which would primarily be Rayleigh's, La Borgata, and it would add a sidewalk on Wilson on the Petrol side. There are existing trails right now. There's a trail on the boulevard, so it does do that. But is that, as we're going through these items, is it consistent with the general plan policies and goals? It might be subjective. Would another project provide similar things without asking for a rezone of recreational open space? That's something to consider. And then the way I found that odd, the mixed uses. It reduces automobile dependency with mixed land use patterns. I guess it does for the people that would, or for the projects that would be right along that commercial area. But again, it's subjective. Does it really do it? Is it enough to offset what they're asking for? And this is something that a lot of people are very concerned about, and legitimately so. Specifically the schools, but we'll talk a little bit about the water supply. EID says yes to every project. EID has the water. That's what they say. They have the water. If you ask, and I'll say the same thing for the schools, they save the water, but they're also keeping an eye on those hookup fees. There's a little bit of a motivation there. So they say they can supply it, and it's their obligation to do so, but every project that comes up, they have to satisfy this requirement. So EID has signed off that they can do this. The same with the school districts. I think we've talked a couple times about that. When we see projects go and the county requests, planning department requests local agencies to respond, and do you have any input when they go to a TAC meeting? Do you have any feedback as we get started? School districts never have any feedback. The school districts always say they can handle enrollment, and again, they're eyeing those dollars that are associated with students coming into the school. And I think we said in the past that maybe we should talk to our school boards about this question. I'll go one further than talking. Yes, we need to talk to our school boards about these questions, but we need to talk to staff because staff supports those board members. Those board members are not experts, and they rely on the staff. So we need to have a comprehensive understanding when we're talking about these things. Oak Ridge is impacted. It's a school designed for 1,600 kids. They're at 2,400 now. They're replacing some portable buildings. And we've heard from the Dorado Union High School District, no new high school until enrollments are increasing by 10%. And overall for the district, enrollments are declining. I know that, I have kids at Ponderosa, one graduated last year, there's fewer kids there this year, there'll be fewer kids in 2 or 3 more years. So people are very frustrated about the school situation. I know that Blackstone, a couple of years ago, they couldn't open the school because they didn't have enough kids because they weren't filling enough houses there, or they didn't have enough residents yet. Then they opened it up, and now I'm hearing from parents over there, they're saying they're impacted that the school is full. Whether they are or not, it might just be a matter of perception, but the concern is there. So, and then the other consistency item that everyone's looking at is that conservation and open space. We're trading 99 acres of recreational open space for open space. How accessible is it? Can we get to it? And we've heard members of the Toronto community have said, the trails are great, and I've looked at them too, they are great, and they are open to the public, but the residents in Toronto say that primarily it's just people in Toronto using them. So is it really you can't force them to use something, but they are making it available as open space, but is it an adequate trade for the recreational open space? So it seems to be a subjective decision. So right now, under the existing general plan land use, the technical unit that we talked about, super high density, we're talking about 624 dwelling units. They could build it now. They'd have to get approved for plans, but that's what land use is now. Whereas the west side planning area, because of the golf course and the open space, there are only 135 units, and that's for Village D1, Lot C and D on the ridge. So the total build out right now, if they want to build stuff and not ask for a general plan amendment or a specific plan, 759 units. In this project they're talking about as low as 737 units, so it's a load of total up to 1,000, which is oxycarb. But the density changes from the medical area from 624 to 134 to 242. It's a big change, and then the significant change also from 135 up to 758. So the development agreement and the community benefits. Now I've struggled looking at this, and we had a preview look at it. And there's some things on that when you look at it, you go, wow, that's a lot of gives, a lot of extractions. And that seems to be what the county is requiring from the developer in their discussion as they move through this process. And so we look at things, they say it's fiscally neutral for both the county, the CSD, and for the fire department. And I know that we had talked, how do we interpret those numbers? Do those match up when you're looking at a chart versus, and when you do the math is hard, but does it add up? We're still looking at that, and I'd love to have more people looking at the fiscal. We've asked the auditor controller, Joe Harn, if he would be looking at this, and his response was not particularly positive. He basically pulled back from doing that because he wasn't supported by the board when he was asking for additional staffing to conduct these exercises when they did their fiscal analysis. Now, Auditor Harn chimed in on the Dixon Ranch project, and I think that might turn some heads of decision makers, and that may be one of the key reasons that project did not pass. It was denied because the fiscal analysis, according to Auditor Harn, was that the county was going to be on the hook for some money, and it was, it's forever. So I think I will make another effort at reaching out to Auditor Harn. Tim had sent a message into him, and he responded to us not favorably. I would just leave it at that.
Well, I won't leave it at that. I'll give a little more detail to
Jump
it.
in.
He basically said he felt that the fiscal analysis that was done in April of 2017, so if this goes up to the Board of Supervisors in February or March, it will be 3 years old. And I'm saying, my suggestion to him was that a project of this magnitude, because if it's approved, you can't put the genie back in the box, or whatever that saying is. It's going forward. So I asked, would he be requesting, or should the board be requesting, or the planning commission be requesting an updated fiscal impact analysis that would take in numbers, say, through September of 2019. And his response was basically he didn't think it was necessary because, buried on page 21 of the 30-page development agreement is a requirement that before the planning commissioners look at and the board of supervisors look at the first small lot tentative map, a revised fiscal analysis would be due. Well, from what I understand on the process, and both sides, whether you're for it or against it, expect it to be a lawsuit. You might not see ground broken on this for 3.5, 4 years at a minimum, and so that means you're not going to have a revised fiscal impact analysis until 2024, maybe. That just doesn't strike me the right way. I'd like our planning commissioners, I'd like our board of supervisors to have updated numbers reflective of real current information. That's all I asked. And basically, he said the planning commissioners or the board can require it, but it would not be his recommendation that they require it to be done. That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, thank you for doing that. The other part of that conversation too is that the tentative maps for the individual villages and the residential build out come later. The approval for the overall specific plan comes now. So we don't, the intent is that when you get down to developing a village and you turn in the application for the planning commission and you have these, the rights to build out, you still have to have some review of what you're actually going to do. But at that point, institutional memory is one thing, but it could be 10 years before they start in a specific village, and the intent of what was approved now might not be remembered at that time by a different group of planning department staff, a different planning commission, and a different board of supervisors. So But the primary purpose of the specific plan is to allow flexibility for them to move pieces around to meet market conditions, which, you know, if it's going to be a good project, that'll help them and will help the community, but the numbers should be real.
But, and again, if this is the build out that goes until, you know, it's a 20-year plan, so we're talking probably 2040 before all this could potentially be built out. And if this is approved in 2020, basically, it set the basic conditions of approval. If the county law changes, ordinance changes, economic changes, they don't have to change the master plan of approvals. It's set in stone once it's approved. So, you know, 20-year plans, you don't make, rarely in business do you make 20-year plans because you just can't forecast that accurately. I don't think government's going to do a lot better, and, you know, based on what I've seen in places I've lived in New Jersey and other places in California, they're certainly not doing better in government with 20-year plans. So I just have a problem with approving something with a 20-year time frame, and that doesn't take into effect changes of law and other things like that, because cast in concrete, you know, 15 years ago.
Well, there is a benefit to providing flexibility to a plan. So, you know, there's a potential that it could be a better result in the long run. But you need to cover your bases. So these are just some of the things that are in the community benefits. There's a community benefit fee, which is new. We haven't done that before. We haven't talked about that before. It's $6,000 per unit at the issuance of the building permit. And if they build out the lower density, it's $4.5 million. But consider that's $4.5 million over 20 years. Right now, it's about $1 million to build a traffic signal. It's $1 million for a mile bike path. What is $4.5 million worth 10 years from now, 12 years from now? And then the other big question about the community benefit fee is, well, what community are we talking about? Because right now it goes to the general fund. So conceivably, those dollars could be repurposed for something in Somerset or Myers. It's a general fund thing. I think we'll be asking that be clarified, define the community, because the impact's here. The dollars should be here. So that's one of the things that we'll be talking about. The property transfer fee, they estimate about $100,000 a year to be based on about 1/4% of the sale. So not the original sale, but any subsequent sale and transfer of the property, the new buyer would be paying 25%. It's all a fee, and then also to the general fund. The public park maintenance financing is a community benefit listed as it. And they had specified in the plan landscaping lighting assessment district. The CSD is now looking at community finance districts because it gives them flexibility of how they could, how they escalate dollars, how they could use the dollars, and that's the CSD's preference. But I don't see that as a community benefit personally, because you have to do that. That's your obligation for the Quimby Park, everything for the park fund. You got to provide the financing for the park. So it's just if they're required to build a park, okay, well that's conceivably a benefit, but the financing of the park is not a benefit because they're required to do it. In my opinion, I don't know why it's on the list, but it's on the list. So the open space construction of publicly accessible trails, $1.5 million. The trail maintenance would be by the future HOA. My question always when they say future HOA, I don't know what protections are built in if that HOA becomes, if it's dissolved, if it becomes a different organization. I know that those obligations are assigned to it, but if that HOA goes away, who knows? So I would like to see protections. I don't know how they would define that. And then the no-cost dedication to Country Club Drive right away. It's about $3 million, and that's, I'll slide over real quick on that. $3 million of right-of-way, which is the county had provided in the CIP that it would cost $3 million for that section of Country Club Drive just to obtain the property. And then advanced construction is $8.5 million to actually build it. But they are being reimbursed through either credits or fee credits for what they spend to build the road. And there's some it's just house defined right now that they don't start on Country Club Drive until they do the first building permit south of Serrano Parkway. And then this phase 2, past the boundary of the specific plan to connect to Silver Valley Parkway. That doesn't happen in, I don't think they can build in Pedrical until that, or no, I have it backwards. There's a trigger between what happened in Pedrical and that second phase. So there's triggers built in for that. So the timing seemed odd. I would like to see some more clarification on that myself, but that's just me, I don't decide anything. The Civic Center we talked about, $500,000 for the pedestrian overcrossing, but it's, the original concept was that they would build it, or they would help the finance fund build the overcrossing. Now they're talking about $500,000 for permitting and environmental review, because DOT has said that, hey, we know we can get grant funding to build this. The cost is the upfront design, environmental review, and planning. My question on that is that the DOT has said they can get grant funding and it's part of the TIMP schedule, and now there's no grant funding for the TIMP schedule. So they're wrong then. I don't know, will they be wrong again? I know, cross your fingers that they're not. It seems to be the culture of California right now that pedestrian and bicycle projects are, are more readily accessible for those grants, but that's state government that changes on it, and federal government too.
Yeah, and that's not triggered, I think, until the 125th building permit is issued. Again, you can have a lot of grading, you can have a lot of homes already occupied before the 125th building permit is issued.
And I had a question for the CSD too about that. So the pedestrian overcrossing would be on the park site, the 60-acre park site. Yeah, it's going to be significant. It's got to be up over the highway, so you're going to need to be high. So it needs some part of that park.
Marble Valley, that's
Almost 4,000.
Almost 4,000 homes, 3,500, 4,000 homes. It's right now, it's sort of geographically split between
Cameron
Park. It's probably mostly District 2.
District 2.
But the fire departments would be half Cameron Park and half El Dorado Hills, based on the coverage areas. So that's a major development. That's probably won't happen, and many of us are no longer too concerned about it, shall we say. But again, we need help looking at these because it's only community involvement, and we do not have enough involvement. I mean, being on next door is not community involvement, quite frankly. We need people.
Might feel good, but
we need you people to come and help us and get your neighbors. And yes, it does take time. We're more than volunteer to whatever expertise that we might have on how to look at these documents, how you have to present them to be effective before the planning commission or the board. We're willing to help you with that, but I don't know about John, but I think we're all kind of wearing out here after a few years. It gets exhausting.
well, I'm excited to remind everybody that Santa Run continues. It's going on tonight. I'm sorry if you're missing it tonight in your neighborhood. It continues tomorrow night in my neighborhood. Tim was on a fire truck last night.
Yep.
It concludes in Town Center on Friday. We missed the tree lighting ceremony because of the weather. There'd be more events in Town Center. It looks pretty good. I encourage everybody to follow that. So the Santa Run's my last thing this week for a nighttime thing. I've got something literally every day. So, and I have the Hangtown Christmas parade with marching bands on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to a day off. But if we help each other out, we can all get a few more days off. As Tim said, we are not experts. We're trying to do this, and we get support from the planning department when we ask questions. And Val Pavolinas is a very good resource for us. He's always very helpful. He couldn't be here tonight. The planning commissioner helps us a lot. Nelson has a lot of experience with APAC. He helps us a lot. So with everything we can hand down, it's conceivable that you're going to come in and have something to give to us, which we'll gladly take. But mostly it's help. So again, I put that email address up there. I will post it on the website. If you have anything you want to contribute, we're here with open arms. We'll conduct our office election next month. It's the same old faces, sorry folks. But if you contribute in a project and become a voting member, we might draft you next year for 2021. So with that, our next meeting is January 8th. It's back here at the CSD. I just got confirmation from the CSD about our schedule for next year. We're all lined up. We'll post that on the website as well. If you have time, sorry for keeping here so late, if you get up to planning damage tomorrow, even if it's just here, to be there to hear the questions and to hear the answers, that's a benefit for you. You could probably contribute something. I know that John will look forward to seeing you. And what kind of coffee do you like? Okay, well, Starbucks is pretty Starbucks. So thank you, everybody. I believe we.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.